Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending and watching the replay to learn all about predictable chart writing. I'm very excited to be here to give you this free training to support your learning in understanding what predictable chart writing is if you may have never heard of it, or if you are very well versed in predictable chart writing and just want to know more and want to know like how can it actually apply to your classroom. So there is a QR code here for you to scan to get four free lessons to get you set up, ready to go, prepared for predictable chart writing. If you haven't used it, there is a step-by-step guide in there that will go through each of the days that I will talk through so that you can go back and reflect on it as well. And then there's also four different prompts in there, so that can give you a month's worth of lessons if you use it one a week. And then get you just kind of set up for success with that. So very excited. Let's dive in. Of course, if there are any questions, you are welcome to reach out to me. Leave a comment. I will get to them as quickly as I can. Email will probably be the best way to get a hold of me if you have questions that I didn't answer. But yeah, let's dive in. I'm very excited to share this with you today. All right, so we have a very quick agenda. We're going to do some introductions of who I am if you're not familiar with who I am. We're going to do some background about predictable chart writing, where it came from, the research behind it, and then we're going to break through the 5 days or break down the 5 days of predictable chart writing. And then at the end, I'm going to give you some final tips because the 5 day strategy was not working for my classroom, just in applying the knowledge and the skills. So I actually have broken it down into 3 days, and that was more manageable for my classroom. All right, so before we get started, if you would like to participate and follow along, let me know. Are you feeling a 1, 2, or 3 with writing instruction for your special education classroom? I know I was feeling like a 1 and a 2 many of the years that I was teaching because a lot of my students weren't writers, so that wasn't high on my radar. How do I get them to write without actually writing? And that was really hard for me to grasp and understand. And I had an OT at the time that didn't push it. And so I was like, great, I don't have to do writing with them. They don't know how to write. I'm not going to do writing. But then I found predictable chart writing and everything truly changed. I was able to find that my students were very confident in their thoughts and feelings and emotions and had ideas that they wanted to share with people, but obviously not the means to communicate and potentially write in that way. So I know I felt 1 and 2 for many of those years. But again, you might be feeling 3. You might be really well versed in writing strategies and skills for your classroom, and getting creative in all those ways. And so that's okay too. You can still hang out and still learn some things here too. All right, so for those of you that don't know me, I am Heather. I have been in the field of special education for 12 years. I was a special education teacher for 8 years and then a curriculum coordinator for almost 3 years at a private autism school. I have a bachelor's degree in special education. That's where my LBS 1 comes from, and a master's degree in curriculum instruction with teacher leadership. So that kind of gave me that coordinator role. And then I'm a certified autism specialist as well. Lifelong learner. I am a dog mom. I am a wife. I love reading. I love learning. So that is why I want to be here and share this with you, is I hope you also are here to learn and grow in your ways. And so that's just a little bit about who I am. So thank you so much for being here. All right, so what is predictable chart writing? Maybe that's the first question that you signed up for this webinar, and you thought, well, hey, let's figure it out. Let's find out what this is. So it is a predictable model of writing created by Dr. Patricia Cunningham. We love her. To have students be successful in their writing process. It was hard for students to originally maybe have those thoughts and feelings written down on paper. But this creates it as a fun, easy way to share their experience, to share their thoughts. Teachers and students can write together, and it's a 1 week kind of program structure, where each day you have something to do. And, I was finding it was taking 15 to 20 minutes maybe. So it was easy to fill in a spot of like, okay, we just finished ELA. I have 15 minutes before the bell. Let's do a predictable chart writing. And again, we'll get into maybe some of those examples in a little bit. So this is supposed to be predictable, right? You hear the word predictable, you see kind of the pattern and the strategy that will go into it as we kind of talk through that. It's predictable. If you have not read Comprehensive Literacy for All, I highly, highly, highly recommend it, especially if you're working for mild to moderate to severe disabilities. And this really truly shows more strategies and tools for your students to read and write. This could even work for a resource classroom if maybe you have some of those students as well. But there are tons of tools, and predictable chart writing is only one of those strategies in this book. So truly, if you haven't read it, get your hands on it, ask a friend to borrow it. Grab this book on Amazon, whatever you need to do. Truly, I read it probably once a year or once every other year just to remind myself of some of the basic things that our students could get to learn and know. And I'm always learning something new that I missed the last time I read it. All right, so who benefits from predictable chart writing? This is always the question. I kind of talked about those mild, mod, to severe types of disabilities. Students who use AAC is another really great one. And we'll talk about AAC and how to incorporate that in just a moment. But we want our emergent and conventional writers and readers to be able to do this. So whether they are an emergent learner or a conventional learner, and we'll talk about how to decipher who they are in a minute. If you know that they're emerging in their skills or conventional in their skills. They need to understand that they are going to translate their thoughts on paper. They can also use alternative pencils, communication devices, flip charts, eye gazes. Students who are non-vocal is another strategy or another way that you can decide if this is right for your students. And then, of course, using AAC to understand their sentence structure, their language, and support them with their existing vocabulary that they obviously already have. So we want to build on that. And I think for me, the benefit of it is I was looking for students who I knew had more to say but couldn't say it. So again, I'm thinking of those early communicators with their AAC device. They wanted to communicate. They had a lot to say but couldn't translate it to paper at that time because of the mode that it needed to be translated. So or put onto paper. So truly think of your students that have a lot of those language, or even don't. You can model a lot of the way, even if you have a student who isn't modeling communication on their device and actively showing those thoughts. All right, so this was again from the Literacy for All instruction. You can see kind of some of my credits at the bottom or the sources. But this chart was really helpful for me to decide, do I have an emergent learner or a conventional learner? You might have both. That is very, very common to have both. But some of these questions of like, do you know, does the student know most of their letters most of the time? Yes or no, right? Yes, they're more conventional. Okay, just make a note of that. Do they engage actively in their shared reading experience? Yes or no? Not really. Okay, fine. That one's going to be a no. Okay, have the means of communication and interaction. Do they have a means for that? Yes? Okay, conventional. They understand that writing involves letters and words? Maybe not. Okay, fine. So that's a no. So we have two yes and two no. That's okay. That sometimes happens. That means they're somewhere in the middle. But there are some strategies there. Again, predictable chart rating is more of that emergent. You can do more independent writing or writing practice with those conventional interventions, but they can also be exposed to predictable chart writing too. So there might be a little bit of both. You might have students on both ends of that, somewhere in the middle, and that's okay. But then again, you can do some of those combined. So you see if you have combined at the bottom there, the predictable chart rating is there as well. So this is a great slide if you want to go ahead and take a screenshot. This is kind of my tool always when I'm working with a new student of, okay, do they need some support? Do they need, do they know their letters? Do they go in shared reading? Um, and for those of you that don't know shared reading as well, there are plenty of resources out there that explain shared reading. I'm not going to get into that today. That Comprehensive Literacy for All is, again, a great book to find some strategies and tools for shared reading experiences. But this is a great, great tool. All right, why should you try predictable chart writing? Again, if you have a lot of students that are non-vocal AAC users, this is ideal for you. It also helps students build their understanding that their thoughts have meaning and their thoughts can be on paper and have meaning, that I can share with other people. We can also teach print concepts, word identification skills, that sentence structures even is a part of it, like understanding that there's a certain order to a sentence, spelling and grammar, where's the period, where's the capital, all of those things. And then communication and interaction, like, hey, what do you want to write here? What do we want to share? What are you thinking about when I say I like to? And then they can find something, or you can give them a couple maybe choices. And we'll talk about choices in a little bit too. And then writing skills. Of course, we're teaching them writing, that their words have meaning, their words have thought. They can gain that self-confidence, that they are a writer and they can create thoughts and they can create sentences and they can create a book, which is a huge goal for some of our learners. But we are supporting and scaffolding as much help as we can so that they can be confident learners. All right, what materials do you need? You really don't need much. It's probably things you already have in your classroom, which I absolutely love. So you need your post-it note in an easel, potentially, those large ones. Those are my favorite because I can put them against my smartboard. I can, put them on a stand. It's really easy to display. You can also do it on a smartboard if you want to make it digital or your Promethean boards. Sentence strips is another one. Again, another thing you probably already have in your classroom. And then I just write the student sentences on here, which I will show you that step when we get there. So sentence strips, we need scissors, glue, markers, and paper. That's it. It's nothing fancy. All the things you probably already have in your classroom. Those first two you might need to order or make sure you have somewhere available. But for the most part, all those other things you should have in your classroom. All right, how can my students write, right? Because that's the main goal, right? We want our students to write their sentence, right? And when we think of writing, we think of paper pencil. What does that look like? So we can have our students gain their concepts and their ideas and their thoughts from their communication systems. Just writing out, I like to swim in their device is writing. It's digital writing, but it's writing. Using some printed communication boards. I know I printed out a couple here. There's a lot on the Saltillo, I never can say it right. Saltillo website. Assistive Wear had another one. So there's a lot of communication devices that you can just print and have there. Depending on where your student is at, they have different numbers of that are on a page. Using eye gaze, here's a variety of letters, here's a variety of words, which word are you thinking that you want to use? Stamps is another great one. Stamping every letter to spell a word is also really helpful. Magnetic or those foam letters, depending on where your student's tactile response is at, and where they can manipulate those letters themselves. Letter boards, that is this kind of letter page. You just show them the board and you kind of just do a partner assisted scanning across the page to figure out what letter would you like to say. Oh, you want to say C. Oh, you want to say A. Oh, you want to say T. Okay, cool. You spelled cat. Nice job. And they might spell something that's not a real word. But what you do, this is another strategy that I haven't gotten into, but we can, is if they spell a bunch of different letters and tell you a bunch of different things to write down, right? Whether it's letters, right, in a mixed way. Oh, I see you have SWIM in this sentence. Are you trying to say swim? Like you try to make point to what they are trying to spell. Um, or point out some of the letters that they did say and try to put it together for them. Because the letters literally might be mixed up in their brains, or maybe they just don't know all of their letters yet, right? Because that's part of one of our questions is, do they know all their letters? And if you said no, predictable chart writing is where you go. So you're trying to give meaning to what they are writing. And they might tell you, no, that's not what I was trying to write. And then you do it again. Okay, what word could this be? And kind of putting meaning to that word for them. Um, Alphabet flip charts, again, same thing, but in a flip book. That's kind of what that is. And that's kind of down here. That's that alphabet flip chart there. And again, eye gaze is part of that too. And then switches and choices. So I would be very careful about switches and choices, because then you are limiting their access to vocabulary. You're limiting their access to their thoughts and ideas. We want to try to make it as open-ended as possible. We do want them to produce their own thoughts. So if you are using some switches with, a multi-step, so there might be multiple words that they could choose from, that's fine. But again, just know that you are limiting their thoughts and ideas, and it's becoming now your thoughts and ideas. So again, if you're holding up 4 different picture cards of what they want to write about, you're limiting their choices. So just be aware of that. And it does become a more assisted type learning. And again, some of our students might be there and some of our students might need that, and that's okay. All right, let's get into day 1. Day 1 is write the chart. This is very teacher driven and teacher instruction. So we are going to be using our chart paper. We're going to pull out some sentence starter. This could be the weather is. This could be part of a morning meeting. You could be reading a book about sports, and now we have a sports prompt to kind of go off of. This could literally be about anything, right? You are reading Huckleberry Finn, and you want to describe Huckleberry Finn. I think Huck is great. You can kind of go right into there and have them describe him. Tall, short, blue, green. Like you could have them describe who they think Huck Finn is, and relate it to anything that is going on. You are doing science experiments about volcanoes. Cool. Let's talk about volcanoes. Volcanoes are loud, hot. There's so many things that you can go into, and create a predictable chart writing sentence. Again, the 4 lessons that I gave you are a starter, but you can really use this for anything. So that is it. So what we are doing is we are giving the students the prompt, right? Let's go with the weather is, since that's on here. So the weather is what we are doing. So either it's typed in their device, it's just displayed for them. The weather is, and then they can go in and either they're corresponding it to a page on their device, right? The weather is, and we're going to the weather page, maybe because they're used to that. And so you're building on their vocabulary there, right? And the part of this is that they are coming up with the response. They may say the weather is rainy, and it might not be rainy that day, but is that a weather? Yeah, that's a weather. That's any type of weather. It didn't say today the weather is. If it said today the weather is, then maybe there's a correct answer. But we want our students to produce their own thought, right? And if they give, the weather is meatballs. Oh my gosh, are you thinking Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs? That's a great movie, right? You want to relate it to them. You don't want to tell them the weather is meatballs. That doesn't make sense. No, hey, let's try to relate it to what maybe you're thinking about. You're thinking about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs? Such a great movie. The weather is cats and dogs, right? The weather is cats. Yeah, the weather could be raining cats and dogs. You're totally right. That is a phrase people say. And then kind of relate it to that of the weather is raining cats. Yeah, maybe we're raining cats and dogs, right? That's the kind of the point. And so you are guiding, you are not telling them, no, that's not the right answer. The weather is green. Hey, yeah, you're right. The grass outside is green, because it is sunny. How cool, right? So you might say, yeah, the weather is green. Totally. It's a green day. They might be relating it to the zones of regulation if you guys use that in your school. So again, we are trying not to make it an incorrect answer. If it's off a little bit, try to find something to relate it to. And if not, you try to guide them to maybe something that it could relate to. So I hope that made sense. Again, we're not telling them, no, you can't use that word. But what can we kind of build to make it? Or what are you thinking about? Tell me more. That kind of language is what we're looking for here. So the teacher is going to put on the board, the weather is sunny, right, in a one sentence so that everybody can see. You can even put the student's name or the teacher's names next to it, so that the students kind of, or you're going to need it down the road actually, but then we can all see whose responses were whose. So I always start with the teacher. So I usually give, oh, the weather is sunny. Oh, cool. Mr. T, what's the weather for you? Like, the weather is hot. Oh, I'm going to write that down for Mr. T. He said the weather is hot. And then we kind of go through the room with the adults in the room. And then we go to the students, let them produce, give them time to think, right? But then we kind of share out. And then I write it up on this chart paper. So the weather is cloudy, the weather is sunny. You can have two of the same answers, and that's okay. That might be what they're thinking about, and that's really cool. You might have the weather is green up there, and that's fine too. But again, put it next to whoever the student's name is, and get everybody's name on that paper, so that they know that they have a thought and their writing means something. So that is day one. That is all of it is. And that might take some time. So again, have the students figure out what they want to say, have them communicate it with their devices or their eye gaze or something to that effect. However they are communicating that out, you are writing it on the board. It's going to take probably 15 to 20 minutes at least, if not longer, for your first couple times. So that is day one. That is it. So here's a quick step-by-step. You're going to introduce the sentence starter. Okay. Again, take a screenshot if you need this. You're going to model that process on the whiteboard or Post-it paper, however you're doing it. Having those staff answer those questions first, that is ideal. How would you fill out the sentence? And then encourage your students to participate and fill out their own. And then at the end, we are going to read through all the sentences and be like, oh, wow, Sasha said, blah, 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 whatever it is. Mr. T said, da, 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 da. Miss C said, da, 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 da. Yeah. So that's what we're doing. So that's day one. There's 5 steps to that day. It seems very simple, but again, it's going to take time and repetition for your students to understand that in that process for day one. So that is day one. That's it. All right, day 2, we're going to reread that chart from, again, we are now on Tuesday. We're going to reread the chart and work that chart. So we are going to take some time before class to make sure each student has their own sentence on a sentence strip. So if they need it to say, my favorite color is blue. My favorite color is blue. You write it for them. Or if they are an independent writer, you can have them write it. Because again, we want it to show meaning and meaningful for them. So yes, day 2, we are going to reread and work it. Let's go to our steps because I feel like that'll help me stay organized here. So the teacher is going to read each sentence on that chart paper. We're going to go through it again. Hey, remember when we did this yesterday? We're going to read these again and say, hey, see, if anything's changed, that kind of thing. Because maybe some students might change their answer, and that's okay. They can totally do that. And then each student reads their own sentence on the chart paper. So again, practicing with their AAC, practicing with their voice, however their output is. Again, if they are a Switch user, you are recording it on a Switch for them. And then together as a group, we are reading all the sentences again. So each student reads their own, and then as a group, we all say, oh, the weather is sunny. The weather is cloudy. That's what we do all together. And then we're going to point out some commonalities in those sentences. So if 2 people put sunny, oh, wow, Miss C was thinking about sunny and so was Sasha. Very, very cool. Whatever it was, both of them said sunny. They were thinking about the sun. And then we are going to have our sentence strips so that students are going to point to the words while they're reading. You can also skip the sentence strip for today and just use the board if you would like, where they come up and point to each word while they read it. They can choose somebody else's to read. You kind of make it fun. They can read their own. They can read, they can read all of them because I know some students want to do that, and that's okay. So it's practicing reading, it's practicing understanding that our sentence has a structure, beginning, there's a capital, end, there's a period. That's the point of this day. So we're again doing a lot of reading, a lot of repetition, and that's what day 2 is. And so you might be thinking, oh, Heather, that's going to be so fast. Yeah. Which again, I will explain why I shorten it. But this is day 2. Okay. Day 3, again, we're going to look at that sentence strip. We're going to keep our sentence strip as a whole strip is where we're going to start, and let them read that sentence. And then we're going to cut it up into each individual words and then let them put it in the correct order. So let's go through that. So the student's going to write the sentence on the sentence strips if they can. Otherwise, teacher, you are going to do that for them ahead of time. And so we've kind of taken it from that chart and we've brought it to our sentence strip. Each student is going to read their own sentence again as a full sentence because, again, we want to practice that sentences have meaning, sentences have structures, there's a certain order to those sentences, that kind of thing. And then again, cutting that sentence. So we have one word on each card, as we kind of saw here. I think movies are loud. That was the sentence that a student came up with. I think movies are loud. Okay, so, putting it in the correct order for right now. And then we're going to rearrange it. Okay, and then have them put it in correct order. So you're not going to put it in the correct order for them immediately. You're going to kind of scatter it around, and let them put it in the correct order. So again, we're talking about the capitalization, the period at the end. Where's the action? What was the sentence that we came up with? You can also give them a model if they need, where they have the sentence ahead of them and then a second sentence is cut up, so that they can kind of match which order it goes in, and then read it out loud if it's in the correct order. I movies loud think R. Does that make sense? Let's think about that. I movies loud think R. That sounds silly, right? How about I think movies loud are? Oh, no, that's not right. Right? And try to move it around and see if we can try to help them figure it out, right? We're missing R. Where does R go? That kind of thing. So you're guiding them through that. And again, words have meaning in a sentence. That's the point, is that's what we want them to know and learn, is that words do have meaning and they are important. So, all right. Day 4 is be the sentence. Now that we got it all cut up, we're going to take those sentence strips. I've also done this on full sheets of paper because I've needed some bigger pieces of paper. And I've put all of the words on a piece of paper, and maybe it's pink papers for I want more cookies. And I know that goes to Sasha. So Sasha is going to have I want more cookies. And then we're going to pass out a paper to each student so that they can be the sentence. So move around the classroom to be in the correct order. So again, we're going to write the word from each student's sentences on paper, or again, you can use this. It's just a little smaller. Using their AAC device, we're going to get to figure out which is the correct order. Each student is going to have one word to be the sentence. And sometimes you need to pull in some paraprofessionals to help you too. Can you be this extra word, kind of thing. And so they're going to kind of direct you of where should we go? Does this sentence make sense? So you're going to like move around and get some movement in there, which can be really alarming for some teachers. But also, it helps our students get up and move around. And so the students are going to move into the correct order until the sentence makes sense. And it's kind of like a game. So we're doing that for each student sentence, each staff sentence, and you're going to repeat that over and over again, as many times as you need to get the sentence correct. And so again, this is kind of fun. That's day 4. Again, this takes maybe 15-20 minutes. Most of these take 15-20 minutes or so. That's kind of where we're at. And then day 5 is making a book. So the students are going to get a piece of paper. They are going to be able to stamp their words on the page, get supported writing, have some, modeling, tracing, whatever needs to get done, so that your student can independently write. I've also added some extra tools here that are super helpful. So students are going to write or glue their words for each sentence, however they need to do it. Because again, we're putting it in the correct order now on a piece of paper. The students can draw a picture, they can print out a picture. However they want to be creative, they can totally do that. This was a great way to bring in technology and go, hey, let's find a picture of the sun because it's sunny. Which sun picture do you want? And then they point out, we print it, we go to the printer, it becomes a whole activity then, where there's maybe some extra steps that they have to cut out the picture, glue the picture. And then write their sentence. So that again is day. Lesson Picks is fantastic. There's a ton of materials on there that can really help you, either with communication device things or creating books. Book Creator and Monarch Reader are another platforms that I absolutely love to create digital books if you want to go more digital versus paper pencil, because again, that's the world we're kind of living in now. And then we want to save these pages. So whether you're doing it digitally and save and print, or just put it in a folder for them so that they have access another time, because eventually we want to make a full book of all of their writings that they did this year. Do you remember back in the day, right, when you were in school, you always had a teacher that would send you, all of your, writing materials home with you, or your math worksheets, or, your stories that you wrote, that kind of thing. That's kind of the thought still, is that we would still show that a student is producing a book, at the end of the year, end of the quarter, end of the semester, however you want to do it. But you are making a book of all of their writing. So whether it's put in a binder really nicely for them, that could be a project as well that you could do for your classes. Like, we're putting our books together, and it's all the writings that they've done throughout the year. Okay, so here's some examples of what I've done in the past with students. So this student drew a school bus with his, front headlight here, all the windows on the school bus, and I go in the bus. I think it was I go. It was the phrase here, and he added in the bus. And so they printed out words for him so that he can glue it in the correct order. So that was production of I go, and then I turn it up with the remote, because I think they were working on the core word turn. I turn it up with the remote. And so then here's his little remote, with his words that he wrote on this page. So very, very cool. I added this little text over the top just so you knew what it was, but typically you would not do that. You would use it as itself. So I just want to explain that. So that's super exciting to kind of how it comes together. It does not need to be fancy. And then again, they put it in a binder, so that it's kind of organized as a book. All right, so some key points here. Make it fun, make it engaging, make it interactive. We want our students to participate as much as possible, using their communication devices, becoming more confident in in themselves as a writer, as a thought producer. Allowing for wait time as much as possible is always helpful in these scenarios, especially when they're producing their own thoughts and ideas. Modeling as much as possible, right? Even if the first week you've tried this and it's terrible, do it again. Try it again. They will get better the more you do it. Explaining those corrections, but not telling them they're wrong. Oh, it sounds like you want to say this. It sounds like you're trying to write this, right? Is that right? Just kind of checking for that validation. You're putting meaning to their words, and let them say, hey, this is what I was trying to say, or this was not what I was trying to say. Highlighting those capitalizations and punctuations. Again, we're thinking about the sentence structures and letting them understand that. And just know that your students are capable. There were many times that I had limiting thoughts and was like, I'm not sure that this student will do well with this. Okay, let's try it. You know, and they proved me wrong. They showed me otherwise, and that's kind of what you want. So, we know all these things. Just a quick reminder as you are doing predictable chart writing, that's all the things too. But you can condense this process. I kind of alluded to this before. 5 days was too hard for me. So I condensed it to three, and that was more manageable for me for 15 to 20 minutes, in my lessons of reading or science or whatever we were doing. I could find 15 to 20 minutes to put predictable chart writing in their lesson. Um, so I feel like this is my best, and my best is good enough because it is challenging to be a teacher. It is challenging to fit all the things in. And so I don't want this to feel like another thing on your plate. So predictable chart rating that you can do in 3 days. I did day one and day two together, day three and day four together, and day five was make the book. That was probably took the least amount of time, but sometimes could be a bit more interactive depending on how much my students wanted to draw or how many pictures they wanted to add because they made it more of a collage. So that's how I ended up doing that. So when you get your free 4 weeks of lessons, um, this will break down the 3 days. So I took day one and day two together, day three and day four together, and then day five was its own, which kind of helped because I usually did it like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Friday was already typically a slower day because my students were winding down for the weekend. So day five was easy to fit a 15, 20-minute lesson, and sometimes it became a 30-minute lesson because it became more fun and interactive as they added their pictures. And they wanted to share it with other people too, of course. All right, so here are some helpful sites. Again, take a screenshot. I can share this replay slide if you would like. And so here's some fantastic websites that I found for predictable chart writing that I go to for all the things. It's called Shared Writing for Literacy for All, but most all the other ones are Predictable Chart. And then that book creator and Monarch Reader as well is linked there. So again, take a screenshot of this and that way you have all of these links. All right. I'm gonna keep going, but if there are any questions, please put them in the comments or email me and I will make sure to get you answers. All right, here's my email for anybody that needs it. My website has a lot about predictable chart writing in there. My Facebook, I talk about predictable chart writing every once in a while. Same with Instagram, but please follow me for more information regarding accessible writing and adapted skills that your students might need. And then also make sure to get your free lessons there. And I will see you very soon. Thank you so much for watching this.